Many thanks for joining us on the Joy ASONYE live program this beautiful 14th day of March 2023. My name is Joy ASONYE. On the program today, we will be focusing first on the CBN's bowing to the Supreme Court's judgment. We will get to learn about how Nigerians feel about that in a moment. And still on the program, we'll move from there to discuss the in-season fire outbreaks across Nigeria. But we'll go for a short break and return with more. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, the Central Bank of Nigeria ordered commercial banks to dispense and receive the old 200, 500 and 1,000 naira banknotes, saying they remain legal tender until the 31st of December 2023. The bank's directive comes after the Supreme Court ruled that the CBN must extend the use of the old naira notes until December 31st this year. Due to the negative impact of the policy on Nigerian business and household. According to the CBN, in compliance with the established tradition of obedience to the rule of law, the Apex Bank met with the Bankers Committee and has resolved that the old banknotes remain legal tender alongside redesigned banknotes till December 31st, 2023. Now, to discuss what the implication of this bowing to this order is, we shall be discussing all of this with Ada Mark Sidney. She is a former presidential aspirant of the PRP and a political analyst. Ada, it is wonderful to have you join us.
Thank you, Joy. Yeah. As usual, you're a trooper.
Exactly. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that compliment. Now, let's just go straight to the issue at hand. I mean, the Nigerians had suffered so much understanding the cash crunch. And we also saw, I mean, it's difficult to get into bank premises these days. I don't know if you have tried, not to mention how difficult it has been to even get to hold the Naira currency these days. But we are hearing the reversal of the policy, somewhat reversal of that policy. First of all, how did you feel when you heard about that?
Joy. In all fairness, yeah, every society, first of all, goes through, a set of changes, but economically, it's not been the most pleasant time for Nigerians. I can attest to it both personally and otherwise. Hearing that news, I don't know, I think it's a bittersweet victory for the citizens of the country because honestly, any policy that is not well thought out, there are good intentions maybe, but if it's not well thought out, especially with a good calculation of how it either negatively impacts the citizens or positively, I don't think it sits well with any of us, and especially because of the extended suffering of the people. It's a bittersweet victory for the citizens at the moment, especially because the new notes that purportedly were printed were never really, per se, in circulation enough.
Would you say they were not in circulation? We're talking CBN admitting that over 2 trillion was mopped out of circulation, and then we're seeing admitted also that about 400 billion was sent back into circulation. I would just like to ask vaguely, do you think in a country such as ours, 400 billion will suffice?
I always am so sorry for, my quirky laugh, but I don't apologize. I just say that, just to be patriotic. To be fair with you, Joy, we have individuals who have scooped up 400 billion individually out of Nigeria's coffers.
Exactly.
And I think it's a smack on the face of Nigerians to presume that 400 billion could go round as citizens, sufficiently to both trade. Yes, it can touch maybe a few cities, but it's almost like it's not there, even though they say there's money in circulation. But when you talk 400 billion with the current economic stats the value of the naira at little, or nothing was still dangling a 400 and do I say 35 naira or 250 at the moment, to $1. How far can that go?
Can I hear you say that again?
Was
400?
Yeah, 400 and 435
for the dollar.
Yeah,
where are you changing your dollars?
No, not the black market.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, not the black market value. At the moment, I mean, what does that suffice for? It's little or nothing.
Exactly. However, there are the school of thoughts that said, because the president-elect had, before he emerged president-elect, had complained that this policy was targeted at him. And now that maybe the Supreme Court saw that and had to rule in favor of those who were asking for the reversal of that policy. And now that he has emerged, it's only right that you follow the body language of the next president. Do you agree with that speculation? Thank
God that you call it a speculation.
It is a speculation because
it's not substantiated.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that would be, sorry to say it, but a prestigiously prideful moment to say it was targeted at you. There are so many other factors that we, the citizens, saw differently, other than that specific individual being targeted. I think, as against that speculation, let's be very honest here. The elections were close when this policy was let out into the society without any pre-briefing. There was no standard time frame to check in with the citizens that there was going to be maybe even a review of the naira, not to talk about a new naira being introduced and the old ones being taken out, while they were yet talking about trying to make the Nigerian society a cashless society. So it was very contradicting. Now, what we saw from a citizen's point of view was that it seemed like it was rather targeted as stifling the citizens, from their economic power so that they could be micro managed, or, just to not be kind, manipulated into making certain decisions.
Okay. Now,
still a speculation.
Of course. Now, let's talk about the old naira notes. I was of the impression that Nigerians do not have these notes in their in their homes any longer. It has actually been mopped out, and the large number of Nigerian currency is indeed in the bank votes, which goes with the policy, the reason why the policy was in the first place enacted. Do you think that there are some Nigerians, but for those who approach the Supreme Court, of course, they must have the notes enough to want the Supreme Court to overturn that. However, would you say that Nigerians, regular Nigerians, still have that currency, that's the old currency, with the long timeline they were given to swap the currency, to change it, to deposit it, and all of that?
No, the beauty of the Nigerian citizen, let me use that word, is that our citizens are very loyal. They are very law-abiding. CBN said this, so we follow the law. So what you saw much of our citizens in society doing was they sent all of this money right into the banking system. You
do not believe there were some who were really affected with having substantial amounts still in their homes? Or
Joy, I have to be very honest. You don't see a middle class to average citizen hoarding money that's not going to be beneficial to my market table. If I'm a fish seller, why would I want to hoard an old note where I know I'm not even going to be able to use it to give you change, or to buy the next, products that I'm going to sell? It's not logical. I rather would say, the elites who had all the access to certain parts of our society in the first place, including the CBN, and were able to have access to this volumes of money, they will be the only ones who would have any reason to hold, because maybe they still have power enough to still go back even beyond the stipulated expiration date for the use of this currency that was already deemed not tenable as a legal tender. But for a poor family to the middle class or average family, there is no way that you would want to keep a dime of yours so it runs into a loss, you know, after the expiration date that had been issued, you know, came to be. You can't pay for school fees with it. Why would you want to lose the value of even a 500 naira note when it's not useful to you in-house? So too many families, everybody complied to that.
Ada,
law.
before I let you go, I would like you to say, do you think the entire aim of that redesign policy and the hardship Nigerians faced has been defeated with with CBN agreeing to the Supreme Court's ruling? And I would like to ask too, do you think that with accepting the old 500 and 1,000 naira, we would see a relief? Is there enough to cover that gap in circulation?
First things first, that policy was ill thought out. Secondly, the purpose for which it was purportedly, you know, created, very defeated. Thirdly, the citizens did not deserve what they went through. And fourthly, yeah, pushing back this currency into the society, it's not enough. And at the moment, I think that the CBN should take more measures to see that the economy is better stabilized at the moment, because the suffering level hasn't gone down. You've just only announced this, and more sensitization needs to go around also, so that even the little that is out there is able to get around to people.
Right. Adam Maximiamos, thank you for being part of the program and sharing your insight into this topic. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much.
We'll move on from here now to start the next segment of the interview, but we'll go for a short break and return shortly. Stay with us. This is still Joy ASONYE Live. Welcome back from that short break. We're moving the conversation now to the recurring incidences of fire outbreaks in Nigerian markets and business place. And to discuss a fire in Nigeria, of course, we're discussing with the National Public Relations Officer, Barrister Abraham Paul Olobo. Thank you so much for being part of the program.
Joy, it's my pleasure to be here.
Exactly. Now, it's becoming very concerning. I mean, even yesterday we had that terrible announcement that there was a fire outbreak in Kano, one of the major markets there. And my question will go to, if Nigerian citizens understand the hazards, do we need some sort of training first in our schools, or where do we get people to understand those hazardous materials they live around, or hazardous behaviors that would curb this in-season recurrent?
Thank you very much, Joy. Yeah, Single Market was in flames 2 a.m. Yesterday, and we got the emergency call, turn out our men. They did all they could to put the fire under control, but not without large destruction of properties.
Over 100 shops were destroyed.
Were razed down. Quite frankly, safety as an orientation, it's something that we're trying to rework into our culture. You know, over the years, when you tell people about fire, just like you tell people about insurance and all of that, the first natural reaction by default will be God forbid, you know. So, but today we're confronting these things again and again. If you ask me, the reason will be that climate change is here. The world is a global village, and even though we partake less in the taking out of the ozone layer, we suffer the most in third world African countries. And so we have very serious hot weather, you know, particularly now that the Harmattan seems to have extended, you know, beyond the conventional period that we'll expect it. January, February, and so by March, people should have forgotten about Harmattan. But the heats are still here. If you put all of that factor together, and talking about the fire triangle, which scientifically it's the origin of fire. We're
Right.
talking about fuel, we're talking about heat, and then we're talking about oxygen. Plenty of air, plenty of dry weather. That's the fuel, and then the heat. You know, when these three components come together, fire is inevitable. And so, for the markets and other places, public places that we're having challenges with, the truth of the matter is, at the Federal Fire Service, we've done a lot of work. You mentioned about school. Yes, at the Federal Fire Service, we've done a lot of work because when the Controller General came into office about a year ago, his mantra was, fire prevention is cheaper, it's easier, and it's safer
Of course.
than firefighting. And so with that at the back of his mind, we had to deploy a lot of logistics into campaigns, into reorientation, into catching them young. So we have school outreach programs across the country, you know, going to marketplaces, going to motor parks, going to public buildings, going to offices, you know, trying to reorient them and then, you know, educate them about fire safety and all of that. But you see, it's a journey that has begun. You know, we're making a lot of effort, but possibly not yielding enough. Right. But when you talk about market fire and all the other public places that we have this incident, for example, the single market which you're talking about, which happened last night, or yesterday.
Morning, or early this morning?
No, yesterday.
Yesterday morning.
Yesterday, right. Early in the morning, about 2 a.m. That's when we got the distress call. And then the Monday market in Borno a few weeks ago. You see that it happened in the dead of the night. Okay, so two things may have happened. One, either they may have left an appliance or an electric, you know, something was on, you know, maybe, I'm not sure, because investigations are still ongoing to establish why that fire, okay? So they may have left an appliance on, but by default, when we go to markets and we do this campaign and try to do inspection, investigation, enforcement, and all of that, one of the things we find is that people use a lot of substandard cables. People use a lot of illegal connections. People are tapping electricity from here and there. And then you have a lot of what I would call makeshift shops. The original shops that are supposed to cover maybe some 30 square meters, people are extending it. Those extensions, they just fuel, waiting to happen. Wood, cartons, you know, and all of that. So once fire happens, you know, you're supplying fuel for the fire to escalate. And in the dead of the night, conventionally, in this part of the globe, normally they lock the market and everybody's gone out. Exactly. So when fire happens, you know, it will have escalated. It will no longer be at the inception stage before we get to know there's fire. Again, because we have been promoting this, and I would like to use this opportunity to also promote it. You know, the first aid firefighting gadgets, your smoke detector, your fire alarm system. These are the things that can begin to blare, you know,
way before the
fire gets to the point where everybody is running.
But in the instance where like it happened yesterday morning, where everybody must have gone, maybe there were security men in the market. How would that have helped?
Yes, the Controller General Engineer Abdulganiyu Jaji has repeatedly called on private sector participation in the fire industry. What does that mean? For example, if you have security men, we have an institution which is the National Fire Academy in Sheda, okay, and then we have training schools across the 6 geopolitical zones. Right. One of the things you can do is to approach us, and of course, we actually go and give those sensitizations and all that. But beyond the sensitization, in this instance, you're talking about billions of naira in investment. The security men should not only know about locking the gate or closing the shop. They should have an idea of what to do when fire happens. Outbreak, you get what I'm saying? So the National Fire Academy and all the other training schools are valuable. So if you register your security men, we can convert them beyond being security men to fire wardens or fire marshals. In that instance, you know, they know how to at least do first aid firefighting. Right. You know, they know how to use an extinguisher, they know what to do with fire blankets, they know what to do with dredgers and sprinklers and all that. You get what I'm saying? So again, it's a call. Okay, if you're investing a lot of money, like the market associations and all that, they should begin to look at the idea of beginning to train, you know, those that they leave behind in the markets. You know, security companies should take the opportunity to send not just for security training, but maybe fire attendant training so that we can roll out marshals, fire marshals and wardens, and they will go a long way, you understand, at least in tackling fire at the incipient stage before the firefighters arrive.
Olobo, there was such a time we were seeing people being issued fire permit or fire certificates. That's after your personnel would have done some sort of vetting of the of whatever business place. Is that happening in our business places, and especially the markets, just to ensure that, like you just mentioned, that there could be a substandard use of electric materials, and just making sure that that is not the case? Is the Federal Fire Service still doing that?
Yes, we have it's a whole department, and in this department is headed by a very senior officer, ACG Bello Zaga. And I'll tell you clearly, it's a department in charge of inspection, investigation, and enforcement.
Right.
Okay, so what is their responsibility? Like you rightly noted, they'll go to public buildings and try to see level of compliance. Okay, so we're still issuing those certificates. But of course, you must be fireproof. You must be fire safety proofed before those certificates are issued.
Exactly.
Where we have the first aid firefighting equipment like the hydrants, the dredgers, the sprinklers, the extinguishers, which are supposed to be serviced bi-yearly, that's twice in a year. They do those routine check, and then they reissue, and of course the certificate is valid for 1 year, and then they reissue you a fresh certificate, for the year. So for public buildings, we're still doing that. For markets, we're still doing that, But compliance is not a walk in the park. So people can sometimes even do window dressing just to meet those statutory requirements. And then when you go, again, energy issues. You go to a conventional market, not the big malls and all that. Sometimes even the big mall, depending on the quality of tenancy, you will see maybe hundreds of generators at the back,
exactly,
with different cables running across each other. So those are the challenges.
When you do see those things, it's definitely non-compliant to the standards.
Yes.
So what do you do? I've not heard
First,
anybody...
we issue them a letter of warning,
right,
and then we revisit. If we still cannot find compliance, sometimes we're forced to shut down the place, and we do that a couple of times.
Would you say it's been effective? Because top of my head, I can think of 5 places that I could take you to after the program. But let's not dwell on that. Let's move on to talk about insurance. While you go on with the advocacy that you often do just to create awareness on the fire outbreaks and how to avoid it, do you also help them understand that they could also get insurance? I know that one thing insurance does is ensure that you do not, even though you are insuring against fire outbreaks, for instance, they do this vetting and ensuring it doesn't really happen. So do you also use that opportunity to urge them to get insured against fire outbreaks?
Yes, of course. Because we have the outreach section that does the campaigns and all of that, part of which I sit as public relations officer, we still encourage people to do insurances and all of that. And we are in partnership with NICOM. Okay. As a matter of fact, there's a roadmap. Before you can actually get insured against fire, you must have a fire safety certificate that shows that you have done all that is humanly possible to put fire at bay. Okay. It's after that you can be insured against fire, because nobody's going to insure you when they're not sure that when fire comes, it's not going to raise through the place.
Right.
So we have that partnership, and so there's plenty of awareness and campaigns in that regard. Yes.
Let's talk about the response time. One of the things Nigerians will often complain about is the response time of the Federal Fire Service in coming to those places. What would you say the service is doing to ensure that there's a quicker response time?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Quicker response time. Response time is tied to proximity to fire station. I'm here in Gambari Crescent, in Katampe Extension, in Abuja FCT, and off my head I can think of the nearest fire station. The nearest fire station to this place should be Public Institute.
Right.
All right, that's the nearest fire station. Now imagine that we have to call in fire service on this road. We have to call them from Public Institute, And so they have to do a detour to get to this place. You know, give and take, it may take them up to 10, 15 minutes. Assuming that the fire machine in public institute had not been turned out for another fire incident, especially in seasons like this. Okay, if they have, then we have to turn out another one, maybe around Guarimpa, you know, and all of that. So if you put all of that together, our response time, you know, is globally, we're not doing so well if we juxtapose globally. But if you talk Nigeria and Africa, we're not doing badly. The reason is very clear. We do not have enough fire stations to cover every street, every corner of the country. However, we have done a lot of work. Before 2015, and I must give credence to the President Muhammadu Buhari-led administration, before 2015, Joy, we had only Lagos and Abuja with functional federal fire stations. But today, we have fire stations in all the 36 states and the FCT.
Right.
Right? Now, we also have fire stations in some senatorial districts. But if you juxtapose that with the landmass we need to cover, you know, it's a lot of work. But of course, if we have a fire incident in city center Abuja, you know, you have the Nigerian Defense College, there's a fire station there. In CBN, there's a fire station there. In NNPC, there's a fire station there. Area 10, where our headquarters is, there's a fire station there. In State House, there's a fire station there. And that is why just the smoke that was triggered at the Minister of Finance, we had more than 10 appliances coming to that spot. Why? Because of proximity. Everybody could just pull out, you know, from Federal Secretariat and all of that. But as we go into the hinterlands, as we go into the large expanse of land that now becomes Nigeria, some local governments are so far apart from the state capital, and it's practically impossible to deploy an appliance, for example, from Makurdi in Benue State to Boko to go and fight fire. Or even Yandef. You get what I'm saying? Because of the distance, the road, right of way, a lot of issues. But it's still, you know, work in progress. And that is why earlier I talked about the private participation. You know, it's a baby of the service. The Controller General wants private sector participation.
Right.
Those who have the capacity. We must give some credit to DIF Medical. That's a hospital somewhere in Gudu. But they approach the service. And today they have a fire station in their facility. Which means if we have any fire incident around Gudu, we can turn out the fire station in DIF Medicals. Nigerians must also know that once you meet the requirement to establish a private fire station, the Federal Fire Service will deploy her men.
Right.
At no cost to you. Okay? We just need you to have the capacity. So if in these estates where we find ourselves, the association comes together and approach us, or we are even reaching out to them these days. Say, look, you can have a fire station in this area. All we need is space where the machine can be parked, and then some kind of, you know, collaboration.
Right.
Once that is done, a fire station can be established.
I mean, I must ask, how expensive is it to have a fire station? Because when you say private participation in this, first what comes to mind is it's not commercially viable, so you might not have that throng of people wanting to do it. But for some people who might want to do it, you just mentioned places like the hinterlands where there might not be a proper federal fire service. If these people want to come together, just give us an estimate as to what it would require. Well,
fire stations by their nature are expensive to set up.
Right.
And I like the fact that you noted that it's not economically viable. The Federal Fire Service, for example, and any other fire service that you see in Nigeria, is government's own way of saying, hey, citizens, we care about your life and your property. We're not income generating. Government is only giving us money to fuel our appliances, to buy extinguishing elements, to train our men, you know, and all of that. You know, nothing goes to government, just that citizens can go to bed and sleep. Okay, so you don't have to set up a state-of-the-art fire station.
Right.
You can actually have a fire post with maybe a rapid response truck, you know, a smaller vehicle. It doesn't have to be the state-of-the-art you know, machines that you see around, okay? But those little ones, it's as much as maybe if you get a pickup that is built for that purpose and then can carry some measure of. Remember, The idea is so that at incipient, you're able to respond before the real firefighters or those who have all the equipment to tackle the issues come. And if you attack fire at the incipient stage, it will not escalate.
Right.
It's just that fire runs with time. So we just say, okay, those mini fire posts, fire stations will go a long way to help, especially when fire is just starting. So as to cost, I may not be able to say exact figures,
what it will
but of course
cost.
it will require a land space, it will require a vehicle, it will require maybe a borehole or some way of generating water. Maybe, if there are hydrants already provided, they can tap from those and all of that, yeah.
Let's talk about forensic investigations after a fire outbreak. I mean, I've not heard about an arrest being made, not necessarily because intentional or from an arsonist, but more of people who haven't really taken as much care as they should in taking care of fire. Do we have those investigations? Do we have people who are culpable for having intentionally or not intentionally causing a fire outbreak?
Yes, the answer is a yes. Like I said, we have the inspection, investigation, and enforcement unit. The role of our investigators, when fire happens, they move in there and they try to establish the cause of fire. Of course, we've had issues where people actually go touching other people's buildings and all of that, yes. And of course, once that is established, they're arrested, handed over to the police for prosecution. The only thing we don't do is, we don't do a lot of media trials. If not, we should be putting people out there and say, oh, these people were caught trying to burn somebody's farm and all of that. But that's not our practice.
Why not? Shouldn't it be so that it can deter others? No.
An accused. These days, even the court don't use accused. They're defendants. They're innocent until a competent court of law can prove them guilty. So it would be, it would be pushing a lot too far by putting out people when we haven't proven the matter.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to this awareness that you talked about. You have mentioned partly that you also do this in schools, in catching them young. But how has that gone in terms of having young people understand that this is hazardous, this could cause a fire outbreak, and having their parents to know? I mean, do you have town hall meetings just so you can reach them? Do you meet them in their places of worship? How do you reach out to the older ones, not necessarily students?
Okay, I'll start with the students. For the student, we have a unit which is called the special duty. And their responsibility, part of their responsibility, the special duty, is catching them young. And so they develop a program, which is the school outreach program, with a complete curriculum that has been approved by government. And so it's literally a class, that happens once every week. And we have officers that we have deployed to so many schools, particularly the public schools, and the idea is to begin to give them the consciousness, because when we started this conversation, you remember, Joy, I said, the culture of safety is not with us. So, but we can't wait for the next generation to get to where we are before we begin to tell them about safety and all that goes with it. So we're doing a lot of that in schools, particularly, like I said, public schools. The private schools on their own, we have a lot of them, we write to them, they come to the fire stations for excursions. It's another way. They can afford to actually bring their lots, to the stations, fire stations across the country. And they do that, quite frankly, with you. But for the public schools, we go to them because we understand the logistics that goes with it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So now to the older generation, we'll have public enlightenment campaigns. We actually go to public buildings, across the country. We go to markets, we go to parks, we go to recreational centers, we go to estates and just have random meetings on the days that the estates are having, their estate association meetings. And then we give them talks, we do demonstrations, we do drills, so they understand how to use their extinguishers, how to
Right.
use their fire blankets. That's where women say, oh, what is a fire blanket? Does it mean any cloth I have? It's a fire blanket. No, it's designed particularly for that purpose. And you're supposed to have it in your kitchen. So when something goes wrong, you quickly break the fire triangle. You take your blanket and you cut off oxygen from the fire, and it's gone out.
Do we even know this? I mean, how many people can even know they can get this? Some people don't even know where to get it. I don't know where to get a fire blanket. I have from when I was a child been told that get a fire extinguisher, and I'm sure my viewers right now would be relate with me on that. However, this do we have places where one can go? Can I approach the Federal Fire Service office to say I want a fire blanket? For instance?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
We have a board, which is a service registration board. Okay, and what that board does is accredit contractors,
right,
and consultants and people who sell fire safety equipment. I serve there on that board as secretary. So I can tell you that we have licensed and accredited agents, and we have a list.
Who sell this equipment?
Who sells this equipment, and we are sure they're authentic. I always discourage people, don't buy extinguisher from the roadside, because the only time you get to try your extinguisher is
when there is
in the act
exactly
of fighting fire. And God forbid that at that moment it doesn't work.
Right.
So you need to go to accredited agents, of the Federal Fire Service to buy them.
But about fuel queues are back, and with them are the black market sellers. I remember that very vicious campaign. I will call it vicious because we were all over radio and television stations trying to discourage people from joining that line of business and also not patronizing them. And I must say, for a year now, we've been experiencing fuel queues, and of course with them, the black market sellers. How would you say your campaign has been in curbing them? Because they are all over the place.
Joy, before we started the campaign, there was a bus incident in Ilorin where over 18 people were burnt. There was a man and wife who were trying to hoard fuel and sell in Plateau. There were so many incidents before that campaign started. And so I can tell you that it's working. It's working because at least people are becoming aware. The risk of actually putting fuel at home, and when you talk about black market, unfortunately, it's a joint agency responsibility. Black market, by its definition, is only in this part of the globe that is done in daylight. Black market in the afternoon. So we must.
That's a good one. I didn't think about it.
Yeah. So
black market in the afternoon.
In the afternoon.
Exactly.
So it's black market, and so I believe that those who are, instrumental, to curbing that, beyond the campaign that we're doing, will also effect arrests, but like I said, we don't prosecute. So once we arrest, we hand them over to those who do the prosecution. But I can tell you that other agencies of government, responsible for cutting down on this, they're doing their much. But it's a walk against the tide. Things are hard. People find it difficult. People think they can survive with just anything they find to do, and all of that. So when you even come arresting, sometimes they make you look like
you're the mean one.
We must just make ends meet. And that's why we resort to campaign. We resort to talking to people, making them understand the danger, beyond the sanctions. Understand the danger of what you're doing. Where you buy your beautiful car, go and get fuel and park it at night. And all of that. So beyond the arrests, the carrot, beyond the stick, we're also using the carrot, and we're getting in some results, Joy.
Okay, I'm happy to hear that results are being recorded, because like you said, it's a tide, and we're still seeing so many of them, and you cannot underestimate the dangers of it all. But for Nigerians that are listening to you right now and wondering, how can I ensure my house is fireproof? What would be your statement to them? Simply
put, if you want to ensure your house is fireproof, approach the nearest fire station, whether it's the Federal Fire Service or any other fire service for that matter, states, as the case may be. And for the Federal Fire Service, in every station that we have a small unit, no matter how small, which is the inspection, investigation, and enforcement. Invite them to come and do a tour, do an inspection of your place, and they will be able to, tell you the extent to which they actually give you a scorecard, 60%,
Right.
70%, 80%, 20%, you know. But ordinarily, you know, I would just say that it starts with housekeeping. Just a neat, tidy environment, you know. It's enough to keep fire at bay. Just housekeeping. Keep the clothes where they ought to be. Keep the boxes where they ought to be. Keep the electrical appliances where they ought to. When you're not in use, put them off. You know, get a small smoke detector in your kitchen, in your bedroom, in your sitting room. You know, get a fire alarm. You know, get your extinguisher. You know, get your blankets in the bedroom. You know, in the kitchen.
Right.
Yeah. And then, of course, if you're using a gas cylinder, which everybody uses now, make sure that it's not directly under the sunlight and is not in the kitchen. You know, for students, we talk to them a lot. Some of them, they cook in the room.
The camp
As
gas.
a matter of fact, the camp gas is under their wardrobe. You know, I mean, that is disaster waiting to happen. So beyond even inviting somebody to come and do an assessment of your environment and give you a score, you can actually score yourself by simple housekeeping. If you keep everything where they ought to be, even if there's going to be fire, it may not escalate immediately. So assuming that you have a camp gas and it's in the kitchen, right? And there's going to be fire, at least you can curtail it to the kitchen. But if your camp gas is in your bedroom or in your sitting room, and then your sofa is there, and then the electric wire is running behind it, you know, so those simple housekeeping will go a long way to help.
Okay. That just brought back memories of my university days. And
You're not cooking your room, right?
I don't want to say right now, Barcelona. I would rather not say. I would just like to say I'm happy I'm alive. Because that's something a lot of people face. But do you collaborate with these electricians so that, or is there a regulation against substandard electrical materials? Because as we were talking, it brought to mind how many people would have died because of the substantial electrical materials that would just ignite because a rat ate some and all of that.
Or because it's substandard.
Or just because it's substandard and could not take the weight of the energy that's needed in the apartment or business place. Do you collaborate to ensure there's a regulation and the electricians or whatever, I don't know if they have a union or a structure, do they have that collaboration with you to ensure it doesn't go further? Yeah,
well, you know, as to the question, yes, plenty of collaboration with AEDC in the north, you know, eco distribution in the south, like that. And then, of course, with the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, you know, who ensures the quality of wires and all of that. And of course, Pinkan, the guys who ensure that they certify your house ready before it can even be, you can fix a meter and all of that, you know. Those collaborations are ongoing, you know. But it's so that we don't talk in isolation. You know, we're in a country where people are struggling. And so sometimes it's not like they don't know the wire is substandard, but they simply say they can't afford the standard one. So they go for the substandard.
But if it's not in the market?
Yeah, that's where I'm going to. So the fight is beyond those even using. We're taking the fight to those who are bringing in, you know, and that's why I said the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, the SON, the Standard Organization of Nigeria, and of course Pinkan, you know, and the rest of them. So those collaborations are ongoing. Remember, you cannot just go and connect your house to the main source. People have to moderate that process. And we are saying only professionals should be engaged, you know. And so those collaborations are ongoing.
How effective would it be? Because when I think about the quality standards in Nigeria, in all sectors really, not just electrical appliances, I see flaws in almost every sector. How effective would you say your collaborations have been?
Well, if you ask me, I will tell you 70% collaboration, 70%. But again, Joy, we have a population of over 200 million. Okay, so it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be consistent pushing against the tide. And that's what we're doing. Okay? That's what we're doing. So you may not see the result in the immediate, but just like the campaign against hoarding of fuel and all of that, we're seeing the results. But when the campaign started, it didn't sound like it was going to be successful.
Exactly.
But at least in the last, I can tell you authoritatively, that in the last 4 months, in spite of the fuel queues, we've not had those incidents, which is a plus to us because it's a lot of campaign that went into it.
Exactly.
So even where people have to buy fuel now, they know where to keep it or how to keep it. Unlike people buying fuel, there was a time people were even cracking jokes that some were putting it under their beds.
Some were giving it as wedding souvenirs.
Well, the lady was arrested and,
but that
and prosecuted, Joy.
Yes, exactly.
You get what I'm saying? That is to serve as deterrent to others. And I'm sure that after that, nobody else has given petrol out as a souvenir. At least not to our knowledge. Once we know, we'll move in.
Okay. Well, okay, this recurrent incidences, would you say that when the rainy season comes, there's less? And what would you tell Nigerians that are listening to you right now about this elongated Harmattan season, period where
the extended Harmattan season, and thankfully we did a lot of campaign, again in prevention. In the office, we have the PPRS. They're in charge of gathering data.
Right.
And the data we have, I can tell you, compared to the year before, the number of fire calls we have received has actually nosedived.
Right.
And it came from the campaigns.
Okay.
And the continuous sensitization on fire prevention. We may have had sparks of fire in Lagos markets, in Kano markets, in Borno markets, and all of that. But compared to other years, it's still on a low.
Right.
You know, so I would say that our campaigns and prevention activities have helped.
Okay.
But again, with the rains coming, we hope that the weather will cool down. And once the weather comes down, the fire incident reported will also drop. But that is not also without preparing, because we are not just, by our name, people think it's only fire we deal with, but we also deal with flood and other related emergencies. So as I'm talking to you, there's already preparation in top gear in anticipation of the rains.
Yeah, exactly.
And its effect, as the case may be.
Especially after the projection that we will have more floods this year.
Yeah.
But before I let you go, Barrister Lobo, I would like you to talk about the emergency numbers to call should there be an outbreak or should anybody be in trouble against fire or flood, as you just mentioned. Do we now have a 3-digit number? I remember the last time we had a conversation, I was asking if we have a 3-digit number.
Yes.
That would just make it easy for anybody to just call. But are you still going to churn out all 11 digits to me?
Joy, the issue with the 3-digit number, we've always had it. But like I told you, and I'm still saying it, Nigerians, we have connectivity issues, and it's not narrowed down to just the emergency numbers, right? So sometimes when people call, especially those that don't have the intellectual capacity that we both share, okay? And then you're telling them, oh, if it's fire, press 1. If it's 2, they say, what are they saying? They just want a call across to somebody and then they can deal. You get what I'm saying? Okay, so that is why we said, okay, we have a national emergency number beyond the 3-digit number.
Right.
Okay.
So this national emergency number directs you to your state. If I am in Kogi State, for instance, and I make that call, you can be redirected back to the state that you are.
Yes. The national emergency call number comes to our national control room.
Right.
And it's immaterial where you're calling from. We already have a dashboard that displays to us, you know, the nearest fire station from where you're calling from.
Wow, that's good.
In any part of the country. So what we need to do is, as the call comes in, we immediately, we're not redirecting the call. We are putting the call across.
Simultaneously.
To the nearest fire station to that incident and turning them out. So from Abuja, we can turn out somebody from Zamfara. We can turn out somebody from Kano, from Maiduguri, you know, and all of that. You know,
but this cannot be achieved with a shorter 999, 119 or something.
We already have so many of them. That's the issue. And so every time you call, because, for example, we have the N-Alert, right, which is an app. We have the 122, we have the 211. The numbers are already there, but it's not solely for fire service.
Okay.
So there's, you have to now say whether it's fire, whether it's road accident, whether it's 419 or it's armed robbery, you know, or it's terrorism or it's a socialist movement and all of that. So, and we still have a population that is, you know, that are not these aware. So they get challenged. I met a lady earlier today, and she was like, the last time I called your control room, one lady was telling me to calm down. How can I calm down when my house is on fire? And I said, but madam, you have to calm down.
but she has a point.
Yes.
But she does have a point, right? So, Lobo, how can you calm down? Your house is on fire. You're watching your properties burn.
That's it. But if you get the training, that's why we do drills. We do emergency drills and all of that.
Okay.
Because you must calm down to be able to communicate.
But so, Lobo, we have actually run out of time. So if you can just share that number with us.
Okay, which is 080 3200 3557.
Can you kindly say it again? Maybe
080
right.
3200 3557.
Okay. Thank you so much, Barrister Abraham Paul Olobo, for being part of the program and giving us such insightful comments as to how we can curb the recurrent fire incidents in Nigeria. Right, so Olobo is the National Public Relations Officer of the Federal Fire Service. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. It's good to be here.
Yes, this is where we draw the curtains on Joy ASONYE Live. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Do have a wonderful evening.